going to continue now talking about local historic districts in South Carolina, how they work, and how you can establish one in your community. The legal framework for the establishment of these local historic districts has been established in the South Carolina State Code of Laws. And that code states that one of the purposes of a zoning district can be to protect and preserve scenic, historic, or ecologically sensitive areas. So because the State Code of Laws allows local governments to do this, they can create local zoning ordinances and historic district overlays to protect the historic areas in their community. And part of that process is the creation of a Board of Architectural Review and the creation of a set of criteria and a review process to review exterior changes within that local district. There are several things that need to happen in the creation of that district, and the first is a survey. The survey helps to draw the boundaries around the area that the community wants to protect, and it also helps to create a baseline to know what is there and what it looks like at that particular moment in time. And it starts a process of tracking changes through the district. The local overlay zone is adopted as part of the ordinance and approved by the city or county council, but it doesn't change the base zoning. So the base zoning for those properties remains the same with this extra layer of protection on top. Part of the ordinance includes the creation of the Board of Architectural Review, and that board is created and made up of volunteers who are appointed by city or county council, and they recommend what properties they feel need to be protected within the city or county to city council. They also review changes within those areas that they have designated, and those changes are only to the exterior of the building and only changes to the sides of the building that can be seen from the public right of way. So we're not talking about turning over the process of design review for an entire property inside and out, just the exterior changes to those properties and just properties that are designated as part of that historic preservation ordinance. People who come before the board with a potential project have to go through an application process where they submit photographs and drawings and even sometimes sample materials that the board can look at and evaluate to see if it meets the criteria that they've established. And once the application has been turned in, there's a public meeting that takes place, and the board is going to look at the design guidelines that they have established, and they're going to look at the proposed project that has come before them, and weighing both of those things, decide whether or not that project will be approved, or perhaps approved with some conditions that will bring it into compliance with those local guidelines. The Secretary of the Interior standards are the baseline for what all design guidelines are created out of. And those standards sometimes are used alone in an ordinance, and sometimes they're just the basis for a broader set of design guidelines that are a separate document outside of that ordinance. But the standards were established, created by the National Park Service, and they are that. They're standards for what all preservation projects need to adhere to. But there are some communities that choose to create a separate set of design guidelines that are more specific and tailored towards their community's needs. And those guidelines are illustrated for the most part, and they talk about placement of windows and doors. They talk about materials, setback, and all of those things. But when you're looking to create your local historic district, you need to understand that the community is probably going to have questions and concerns. And those concerns are valid, but many can be cleared up with just some explanation about how the process works and how it will affect property owners individually. One of the most specific questions is will it lower my property value? And studies have been done, and the answer to that is no. It does not affect property value in a negative way, but it does affect it in a positive way. And it has been shown in cities like Columbia, Beaufort, and Greenville that once properties are included in a locally designated historic district, house prices increase, house values increase, and that's because you're guaranteed that your neighbors are going to maintain their property and everyone is going to be held to those same standards. In some of our local historic districts, Newberry for example, tourism and economic development was bred out of preservation. They restored their opera house, which was slated for demolition, and once the community got together and decided it was a building that they wanted to invest in and save, they now have new businesses, a hotel downtown, and a lot more tourism and economic development that they did not have prior to that. Cheraw is another example where they had an international corporation decide to stay in their community and expand because they enjoyed the beauty of the historic district and all of the things that the historic district had to offer their employees. And finally, Conway, another great example of downtown revitalization and how it can turn your downtown into a success. 15 years, $14 million worth of investment for facade improvements, and they have created a vibrant downtown.